Stories of an aircraft builder. As a young person, you can't just build real airplanes. Everyone needs a hobby as a balance, of course. I've always loved creating things, so model building has been a constant companion on my journey. I still remember my first plastic model kit that I got from my father back then. It was the Henschel 123 from Eski. I must have been 6 when we sat together at the kitchen table in our apartment in Schorndorf and built the model. Today I have it in my collection as a build model and as an unbuilt kit. Dad himself was more interested in ships and had built his own models of large wooden sailing ships as an apprentice bargeman in his youth. After the Henschel he therefore obtained 2 models of the Scharnhorst from Heller in 1:400 scale, which we built together. One was to represent the Scharnhorst and the other to resemble the Gneisenau. They stood on our shelves in the living room for a long time. That's when the model making virus arrived in my life and I built one model after the other. In my hometown of Schorndorf there was a Vedes toy store that traded under the name Schnabel. There was a large model building department on the 2nd floor. There was also Mr. Wunderle with his great model railroad and model building store in the town center, and a smaller model building department on the upper floor of the bundle department store. I don't think a day went by that I didn't spend at least once in one of these stores and marvel at the model kits there. They knew me well. Wolfgang was always there and we spent our time together building the latest models when we weren't doing anything else. There were no digital cameras back then and I was constantly taking pictures. I wouldn't really call it photography as a hobby, but I loved doing it and there are still many pictures from that time. At some point a man started working for Mr. Wunderle as a salesman and I really liked his manner. He was always full of tips and tricks for model making. His name was Ralf Bornträger, and it's no exaggeration to say that he had quite a positive influence on me with the encouraging manner he had. He also introduced me to photography. He was actually only out and about with cameras. We photographed our models many times. And apart from airplanes, I liked military models best because I was able to work on fascinating vehicles with weathering methods and the design of dioramas. At that time, Matchbox organized model building competitions and sales outlets could take part. Mr. Wunderle did the same with his store under the management of Ralf Bornträger. Wolfgang and I took part in these competitions and also won certificates. The models were then displayed in the Wunderle shop window for weeks. Model making was a great hobby and still is for me today, even though it was much more important in society back then. Today only an elite circle of particularly stubborn people will pursue this beautiful hobby, which incidentally is one of the oldest in human history. I mainly built model kits, of course, but even as a young boy I always wanted to build models myself. I remember, for example, how during the week I built rafts out of toothpicks, which my father got me in bulk, and then increasingly complicated boats, which I took into the bath on Sundays. My father was a heavy smoker and stuffed his own cigarettes. There were always nice big boxes of tubes left over, and I used them to build a model of the spaceship Comet from Captain Future. I also wanted to build small Lilienthal gliders out of branches and toothpicks, or the flapping apparatus by Böblinger that I saw in Bergius' book Die Straße der Piloten, The Road of the Pilots. But I didn't have the skill for that at the time. I later realized this in the models of the Lilienthal gliders. I then read that Horst Hinrichsen wanted to publish a book about the Tiger model family and was looking for photos of model builders. I had just built a model of the Tiger tank in a wheat field and sent him pictures which were actually published. It's crazy how many models I built back then. I'm happy to show you the pictures here. When I was about 12, I decided to build the Fokker triplane in large scale, full size of course. I started with 1/6 scale model and then put that aside when I concentrated on the full size airplane. But I built the wings from wood in 1/3 as a study object. Unfortunately, there are only 2 photos of these left. My room was full of all kinds of models back then, and I wouldn't have wanted to miss those years. I've already mentioned that I also managed the branches of my father's electronics stores back then, but not that I tried to set up a model making department there. A sales store for models also. That actually worked quite well, but the contractual obligations that Revell, for example, imposed on a small company were a real hindrance. The minimum annual turnover at the time, that means the purchases you have to make from Revell, was around 10,000 marks, and all prices were fixed. No leeway to raise anything. Of course, other model suppliers acted in a similar way. The modeling hobby was on a downhill. My time in the military put a stop to the expansion of this business anyways. Model making is still with me today, and is therefore part of my little museum. I use models to depict the period of technical development after 1920. If you are interested in this and would like to see my model collection, you are welcome to view it on Facebook. I will place the link in the description of the video. I have also built wooden ship models, which is already in the top class of model making, but my absolute crown jewel since then, apart from my Lilienthal models of course, in 1/15 scale is the model of my Fokker triplane, also in 1/15 scale, which I presented in episode 10 of this series. For some time now I have been working on a Fokker E3 in the same style. However, only the elevator and the vertical stabilizer and the rudder as well as parts of the wing exist for this model. Unfortunately, there are only 24 hours in a day, and I would rather spend most of that time building real airplanes. So, in 1996-97, I started building the next triplane, although I didn't do it alone. However, this airplane has not yet been completed. As you know, many cooks spoil the broth in a project of this size, and so this relationship also broke up. But you can look forward to this story in the next part of Stories of an Airplane Builder.